Kaiju number 8 is one of the most anticipated anime of the year and is off to a hot start with its first episode premiere. But does this anime give us Christians content to worry about? Let's go through the first episode together and find out. What's going on, fam? Welcome to the Adoname podcast, where we watch anime with the redemptive eyes of a Christian believer. My name is Manny, and today we're going to be going through the first episode, the premiere episode, of the new anime called Kaiju number 8. So just a little bit of information about this anime. This anime falls under the subgenres of action, military, sci-fi, and shonen, and is made by the studio Production IG. It just released April 13, 2024, and it has a rating of PG-13. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the episode starts out with a stormy view of a city called Yokohama City, and we hear people speaking through radios, sounding like they're on a lookout for unusual report sightings, kind of like they're part of the military. And then we see out of nowhere this beast, which we find out is called a kaiju, comes from the ground and begins terrorizing the town. So then the military people start speaking through the radios again. They get into position and they start opening fire at the kaiju with no avail. It does nothing to it. And this scene is starting to make me think of, okay, this is looking like a Godzilla type of anime, which is kind of cool. Let's see where it goes. Then we see a special team called 3rd Division, and they show up from a helicopter, and then they start engaging the beast, and they successfully obliterate it with a flash cannon, and it looks like it's the leader of this squad. And with the flash cannon, it obliterates the beast, and there's blood everywhere, and it starts raining the blood from the sky. And then we see the silhouette of a woman that is part of the division, and it's very obvious that this is the leader of the division. So for an intro, it's a pretty good intro. It definitely is a hook, line, and sinker. We already see lots of gore. We see lots of action, and we see like a semi-dark type of vibe to it. But I really like the intro. So then the scene changes to a clear day as a cleaning crew arrives to clean up the remains of the kaiju, and there are guts and blood everywhere, all over the town, all over the city. And as they walk towards the scene, there's a reception going on for the 3rd Division team. So this is very obviously right after they obliterated the kaiju. And the 3rd Division team is walking by, and we find out that the woman is the captain, and her name is Ashiro. And then we see the cleaning crew getting to work, and the protagonist of the show, whose name we find out is Kafka Hibino, and he starts narrating how their battle begins after the initial battle. One that is not met with cheers or gratitude, but is nonetheless their unsung battle against the kaiju. And this part here really started making me think of the quote-unquote lower jobs that people have, right? So first of all, this job that he does is very degrading, is very disgusting, but we can all agree it's very essential for society. And there are people who are led to do these jobs in those moments, and we have to believe that God is the one who designs that, because he does. Because imagine if we didn't have people who worked as, jobs like being a garbage person, garbage men, or cleaners, or any kind of job that requires getting dirty or filthy, that we think is like the low of the low in the society, according to the society. But there's honor in any work that helps and supports people. Not everyone is going to be a doctor or a lawyer, and not everyone should go for that just because of the money. We have to find contentment in Christ and in the work he leads us to do, as we can bring honor and glory to God. The book of Colossians chapter 3 verses 23 to 24 says, "Whatever you do, work heartily, as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. Whatever you do is the key here. Bring him glory in your work and that will also lead to contentment. A great book that I recommend for everyone in this topic of working and being content in your work as a Christian is a book by Sho Baraka, and the book is called He Saw That It Was Good. I definitely highly recommend it. Love the book. But let's continue. So Kafka, the protagonist, he seems to really know the work very well, and he helps those around him. He unfortunately gets assigned to the intestines, which becomes a really, really funny scene actually, because, well, we all know where the food starts getting processed, and the intestines is when it starts becoming poop. So then the scene goes forward to that night when he gets home from work and he has the TV on and he sees Ashiro in the news being hailed as a hero. We then see a flashback of Ashiro and Kafka as kids, and he's telling her that they're going to wipe out all the kaiju together as they look out from a hill at a burning city. And then the flashback ends there, and then Kafka becomes upset at where he is now in life, but he tries to remind himself that he's helping society and he lives in a nice apartment with plenty of food. And I think a lot of us can definitely resonate with feeling like this. We try to find contentment in where we are in life, and sometimes it can be really difficult. We have to cling to Jesus and remember that he is in control of our lives and he gives us many joys. But when we find ourselves in discontentment, it could be the Lord pulling us towards him. And that's a healthy way of taking it. The worst mistake we could make is to not go to him with how we feel in our discontentment and just try to fulfill ourselves our own way. That's a big mistake. God cares about our joy and he cares about our contentment, and he gives grace to those who ask for it. And we can have faith that the creator of joy and contentment is going to help us with our struggle. The book of Hebrews, chapter 13, verse 5 says, "Keep your life free from love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you." He will always be with us. And because of that, we can find contentment in him. How many times have we heard stories of people in a relationship where it doesn't matter what they're going through, as long as they have each other, they're completely content. They may, want to be in different positions, different circumstances, but as long as they're together, as long as they have the love between each other, they can get through anything. And that's how we have to take our relationship with Christ, because that it's magnified beyond that. That's only just a small example of what we can experience with Christ, with our relationship with him. It should be whatever comes, whatever is going on in my life, I know that Christ is with me. I know that he will get me through this. And I can be content because he is always with me. So let's keep going. The scene then changes to the next day as Kafka drives to work in his scooter. He meets a new member of the team named Reno Ichikawa, who is young and he's aiming to join the defense force. And this actually kind of exposes Kafka because that's actually what he wanted to do too. But we find out that he gave up on that dream. So the new kid starts questioning him, and Kafka says he just wasn't good enough. That's how life goes. You find out that you're not good enough and you keep moving forward. But Ichikawa didn't like that response, and they kind of butted heads for a minute. Ichikawa was coming out like really, I wouldn't say prideful, but very head on, very confident in his decision, and he didn't want his negativity to affect him, if we could say it that way. So they go into the job, they go out back to the kaiju, and they start working together, and unfortunately, they have to go to the intestines again. Well, Kafka has to go there again, but this time with the new kid. And these things were pretty funny between both of them, talking about how disgusting it was when they were having lunch and they couldn't even eat. It was really funny. I really like this scene. So after they finished for the day, the rest of the crew headed out, And Ichikawa takes this moment to thank Kafka for helping him get through his first day, since Kafka was very helpful. He was basically his mentor for the day, and he was actually really thankful. And I love the humility that he shows here, especially after, the situation that happened where he was a little overconfident and made the other person feel kind of terrible about themselves, in this case, Kafka. But the fact that he can recognize and give honor where honor is due was such a great little scene to see. And it makes me really excited for what's to come with their friendship. It was really a very nice moment between both of them. So then Ichikawa then tells him that they're raising the age limit to join the defense force, that maybe he should try again. So they have a nice little moment here. And then all of a sudden, just when everything was looking nice, a kaiju appears from the ground, and it came to eat Ichikawa. And in that very moment, Kafka pushes him or shoves him away and saves him. And then Kafka tells him to run away to save himself, and which Ichikawa ends up listening regretfully, because you could tell he was struggling to whether he should stay or not. But he ends up running away, and Kafka starts to distract the beast. And then as he's running away from the beast, distracting him, we get another flashback of that same scene of the flashback we had earlier with him and Ashiro. And we find out that they lived in the same town, and a kaiju tore down their homes and the whole town. And in this flashback, they shared a moment of resolve to fight the kaiju and to join the defense force together. So then the flashback ends, and Kafka tries to fight after remembering what he wanted to do, and he's going to see what he can do against this kaiju, which is not as big as the other one. So maybe he could take it on. But then he gets smacked and scratched in the chest really bad, and then he becomes immobilized because his leg during the impact gets broken. And this becomes a crazy scene because the kaiju is about to eat him and he can't move. So he's given up at this moment. And then Ichikawa shows up out of nowhere and hits the beast on its face before it eats him. And then Kafka gets upset that nothing's changed, that he can't protect anyone, not even the new kid. And then in a quick sequence, we see a tiger show up out of nowhere, and it attacks the kaiju. And then several shots from different angles are fired at the kaiju, and it kills it instantly. And then we hear Ahiro's voice confirming that the target is dead, and they're initiating the rescue operations. And this scene was nuts. But for the sake of the story, it's definitely a moment that should solidify their friendship even more now. And I'm talking about Kafka and Ichikawa. How they protect each other and fight to defend one another. And we can definitely take their example in this. Maybe not necessarily fighting beasts. That's a little extreme. But we will be presented with opportunities to sacrifice for the good of our friends. The book of John, chapter 15, verses 12 through 13, says, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone laid down his life for his friends." So that's a nice little reminder of the commandment that we have from Jesus, to love our friends and to love them in a sacrificial manner where the full benefit is for them. So it was a pretty nice moment. So then to move on, then they're saved, and then they get sent to a hospital, and it's nighttime now, and they're sharing a room, Ichikawa and Kafka, and Ichikawa starts thanking Kafka for saving him, for telling him to run away, and basically sacrificing himself for him. And this triggers Kafka because he's fighting himself. He knows he has these desires to do good, to serve in a much bigger way, at least in his eyes. And that's when he decides that he's going to try the defense force again. And before he could even finish his sentence about saying that he wants to try it again, he sees what looks to be like a flying kaiju right in front of him. in the hospital room, and it creepily says, "I found you." I can't even make it that creepy, but it was really creepy. And then it enters Kafka through his mouth. And then he starts losing it and convulsing. And then when Ichikawa rolls the curtain to see if he's okay, because they're separated by a curtain, Kafka has turned into a kaiju with his conscience still intact. And then they both start freaking out. And then they're like, okay, we got to get out of here. And an old man walked by. And when he sees the kaiju, he gets on the phone. And obviously, we know he's reporting him. And honestly, in this moment, I'm completely caught off guard. I definitely did not expect that to happen. And honestly, it kind of upset me because, I mean, this thing is pretty close to being considered a demon. Much more now that it took possession of Kafka. In that manner, like that was over the top. This pattern is actually really common in anime. I didn't expect it to happen here because I thought I was going somewhere completely different with it. But I was hoping that he wouldn't have a handicap now. That's the way I see it. And, you know, I mean, let's see how he ends up controlling this new form of his. But, I mean, demon possession will always leave a bad taste in my mouth. That's the way I took it. But let's see if they take this in a positive way or a negative way. If what happened to him becomes to everyone a great event, or there are more instances of it happening and is counted as a good thing, that would be really concerning. But we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens. So right after this happens, the credits roll, and the post credit scene shows Ashiro and Kafka as kids, another flashback, planning how to fight kaijus. And Kafka says, you know, he will never leave her side. He will always fight alongside her. And then the flashback ends, and then we see Ashiro in the bathtub as she's recalling that time. She's thinking about that moment, and she audibly calls him a liar. But she's alone. She's just thinking out loud. And then she receives a call about a kaiju at a hospital, and then she prepares to head out to strike. And we obviously know they're going to confront each other in a very interesting predicament. So, for the most part, I like this episode. And it surprised me in many, many good ways. And, well, one bad way, which we just talked about. But it can still be redeemed. So, let's wait and see. But I think this show has a lot of potential to be a good show so far. It's very popular, which doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be very good, especially for us Christians, because we know that popular does not mean we can watch it or that it's good for us to watch. But it's easy to see why it's very popular already, just from this first episode. But we should tread carefully with the whole possession situation. We have to be wise about that. Other than that, I'm really excited to see Kafka try to make his dream come true. His friendship progression with Ichikawa, that's really interesting to me. I'd like to see a brotherhood, or they fight alongside each other, and hopefully a reunion with Ashiro and potential romance. I don't know. Maybe it could be, possibly. I'd love to see that and see them all fighting together in a team. That would be the goal for me that I would like to see here. Lessons about teamwork, lessons about protecting each other, loving each other. I know that sounds very rainbows and but we have to keep that in mind, that we have to enjoy the good in shows, and we have to think about why we enjoy shows in the first place, right? We have to be conscious about, okay, this show that I'm watching, why do I like it? Do I like it for good reasons? Or are the reasons that I like it, maybe I would be a little ashamed to admit? We have to be conscious of that. We have to be wise with what we watch and why we watch it. But on that note, there's a lot to look forward to. So let's see how it goes. And I'll definitely, once the season is done, I'll be doing a flag review on it. So we can actually talk about a lot of the stuff that happens. and see if where the show is headed at that point. So that's it. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you for listening. Until next time, grace and peace. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this episode of the Adoname Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating. You can also follow us on Instagram at Adoname Podcast. Until next time, grace and peace.